I'm reading from number 838, taken from AnnaVonReitz.com. One more time, slowly. 1.1. You begin your life as one of the free, sovereign, and independent people of the United States, a Virginian, Minnesotan, Texan, etc. 2. While still a baby in your cradle, uniformed officers, in quotes, conscripted into the United States Army, or the U.S. Army, who appear to be civilian doctors, improperly seize upon your name and estate and coerce your mother to sign a false information to the effect that you are a U.S. citizen, the same political status you would have if you were a Puerto Rican born in Puerto Rico or one of the other insular territories like Guam. Number 3, this status as a territorial citizen, in quotes, obligates you to serve the government and obey its every whim, to be defined as a taxpayer and subjected to selective service, and to need a license, which is official permission to do something that is otherwise illegal, for things like getting married or traveling in your car from point A to point B. It also subjects you to the foreign British equity law and territorial court system, which is rigged against you so that the British affiliated Bar Association members can rule against you 97% of the time via the abundant use of their judicial discretion. Number 4, throughout your life these vermin misinform you, either deliberately or in ignorance themselves, and tell you that you have to have a Social Security number, you have to have a driver's license, you have to have a marriage license, and you obediently do what you are told. Every time you do, you again unwittingly confirm that you are a U.S. citizen and effectively bear false witness against yourself and against your own interests, just to get along and survive in this ugly horror show world they have created. Number 5. Here's the first take-home message, campers. You are not a citizen of anything. Citizens serve the government. Nationals have the government serve them, so which one are you? Duh. Are you paying them or are they paying you? And if they are paying you, what is the payment based on, if not your own hard work and years of paying taxes you never actually owed? Number 6. So, in effect, you have been kidnapped and trafficked into a United States territory and never told about this change in your official political status. You've been subjected to the Queen of England and the debts of the British Crown Corporation, and if you woke up enough to complain, they slammed you into one of their very own rigged courts where they could rape and pillage you and your name and your estate some more. Number 7, but how could this be? How could this happen? How could nobody know about this? Well, they never told your mother, and you were too young to know anything about it when it happened. So why would you have an inkling that this is so? You couldn't know. You couldn't even complain about it. And the dirty, rotten vermin planned it that way. Number 8. So here you are, transported on paper to Puerto Rico without a clue and without a paddle to get home, stuck in their foreign political status, subjected to their foreign law, stuck paying their foreign taxes, suffering through their foreign bankruptcies, and living in their territorial reality. And this is all being done to you by what appears to be your government, but it's not. It's their government, which is supposed to be acting under a contract called the Constitution of the United States of America to protect you and your rights. Number 9, so how did they get around their contractual obligation to honor and serve and instead pillage and plunder? They just pretend not to know that you are an American from one of the American nation states. After all, your mother said you were a U.S. citizen. She just didn't know which U.S. they were talking about and wasn't told either. And then you came along like a good little dweeb and signed up for Social Security, and everyone knows Title 42 plainly states that this program is only for federal employees and dependents and political asylum seekers. Well then, you must have sought political asylum, right? In Puerto Rico, no less. I hear the climate is nice there. Number 10. Who knew? The government knew. The black-hearted, treacherous cheats in Washington, D.C., they knew. That's how they were all getting, that's how they were getting all the gravy. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, they knew. That's how they paid for their newest whiz-bang jet fighters and germ warfare programs and everything else. The Clintons, Billy and Hillary, and Jimmy and Ronnie, and both Georges and Mr. Obama, they all knew. Everyone on their side of the fence knew, and they just used to laugh at you and at you poor idiots stumbling around still thinking that you were living in America. They called you sovereign citizens, a deliberate oxymoron, and thought you were too stupid to ever get the joke. They called you livestock and treated you that way too. 11. And if you're not mad enough to spit, if you're not angry to the core, if you're not ready to get on your feet, then you still aren't getting the drift of what's been done here. Go back to the top and read slowly again, remembering that these people are on your payroll doing this to you and your sons and daughters. Number 12. But you say, they're Americans too. How could this be? Surely they wouldn't subject themselves to all these things. They wouldn't live like slaves at the mercy of their own employees. Of course not. They had to leave themselves out, didn't they? Well, here it is, black and white, the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act of 1976. You, my dears, are all foreign sovereigns from their perspective. Oh, they admit that you are in fact sovereign. They can't avoid that. They just pretend that you gave it all away and volunteered to be treated as a Puerto Rican and a debt slave, whatever else they wanted to say about you, while they privately retained all their own rights and prerogatives as lawful sovereigns on American soil. You should see Bill Clinton's claim of copyright to his own name and estate. He left nothing out, not so much as a comma. Number 13. So if you are sovereign on American soil and you are owed the guarantees and protections of the Constitution of the United States of America, how is it that you're still being chased around by their bill collectors, thought to be part of their bankruptcy, harassed and addressed by their courts? Well, remember, all this bullshit is military. Remember the sentry asking for the password. And if you didn't know the password, he can shoot you, right? It's the same thing. You have to give them, quote, all caps, mandatory notice that you are exempt and immune, a foreign sovereign, with respect to them, per the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act of 1976. 14. And then you start taking names and checking dates, and you start holding these vermin feet first to the fire. You start telling them the truth, that they have no right to address you. You should also form up your lawful county general assemblies and elect your land and soil jurisdiction sheriffs. Set up your jury pools, elect your American common law justices of the peace. Many of you have been asking if Hillary broke the law and endangered national security and Obama illegally spied on Donald Trump for political purposes. Why are these crooks still walking around? It's because they're claiming to be foreign sovereigns on American soil. These lousy pirates have beat feet back home and sought the protection of the political status they have stolen from others. The only way to bring them to justice is for us to wake up and remember who we are. 15. Now, most Americans are peaceful, even docile people. They want to live and let live, mind their own business, work hard and play hard. Most Americans want and ask for nothing much from the government except to be left alone and maybe some pothole filling duty. But they won't leave us alone because they want to steal from us. They want to continue commandeering our lawful government. They want to call the shots and rule over the rest of us. They have their cozy little fraud machine and their bogus two-party political system all set up. They have their corporate government and their corporate military, and they would just as soon forget all the old folks back home. Number 16. It's time to jack them up. Clear to the ceiling, and all these bar association members, it's time to tell them where to get off. Way off. Who do they think they are? Who asked for the services of a British court on American soil? What country do they think they're in? Is this really just Greater Puerto Rico? Or is it or is this about to become America again, with a big fat heavy foot stomped down on the Queen of England and all her busy little perfidious minions? Here it is, mandatory notice. We are American foreign sovereigns returning to our soil. We never really left it, so death and damnation to anyone who claims otherwise. See this article and over 800 others on Anna's website at annavonreitz.com. To support this work, look for the PayPal button and give generously if you are able. I'm reading from number 15, an in-depth explanation of the games that have been played on the American sovereigns. I think people need to go back to the earlier essays. This one was updated 14 July 2014. Nothing to discuss here, boys. There are over 350 different meanings ascribed legally to the four words United States of America, and all of the above fall into that pile. There's no use even discussing it unless you know the context in which the words are being used, but yes, the United States of America is a corporation, a religious nonprofit chartered by the Roman Catholic Church, no less, in Delaware. When used in this context, it may appear in all capital letters, which is one means used to identify corporations. Also, you want to pay attention to the word "the" and how it appears, as that often gives the best indication of the nature of the entity being discussed. There's a lot more where that came from. I've been working with this problem for 35 years, so anytime people need information about a topic, let me know. I'll either know the answer or someone else in my circle of friends will have it written on their knuckles. The whole topic here discussing is crucial to understand what we're dealing with, so let's take a moment and deconstruct it some more. There's the United States of America, that the Republic, notice the small u on United, that's the way the founders designated it, and the way it appears in the original equity contract known as the Constitution for the United States of America. Note the use of the preposition for, not of, as well as a small u on United. Then there is the Federal Corporation, which is the business entity responsible for providing the 19 enumerated governmental services that the original states contracted for. That's gone by various names. The first unincorporated company formed by Ben Franklin was simply called the Company or the United States. It operated from 1754 to 1863, when it was bankrupted by Lincoln. Please note that this was a commercial governmental services company that also functioned as a trust management organization due to the two-part nature of the original Constitution. The Constitution is both a national trust indenture, preamble and Bill of Rights, and a commercial services agreement, the 19 enumerated services the federal government was supposed to provide in common for the states. Then we went through bankruptcy, reorganization, euphemistically called Reconstruction after the Civil War, and a new trust management organization and governmental services corporation was organized, which published its corporate articles as the Constitution of the United States of America. Note that "the" is not part of the name of the document, and that it is not capitalized like the original Constitution, that the U in United is capitalized, and that it uses the preposition "of" instead of the word "for." When you see any differences like this in legal documents, it indicates that it is a totally different document. In this case, it is a document peculiar to that new corporation that was formed in the District of Columbia, calling itself the United States of America Incorporated. This version functioned from 1871 to 1933 when it was bankrupted by FDR. Again, we went through bankruptcy reorganization, only this time it lasted 80 years, from 1933 to 2013. During that time, the governmental services contract was fulfilled. From 1944 onward by the United Nations Corporation, styled as all caps, doing business as the International Monetary Fund, styled as all caps, doing business as United States, Inc., styled as all caps. Both the IMF and the United States subsidiary are chartered in France. Since the bankruptcy of the United States of America, Inc. finally ended, the rats have set up a new Federal Reserve, styled as all caps, under United Nations Corporation auspices to replace the old Federal Reserve System, and they're preparing to bankrupt the IMF subsidiary doing business as the United States. Then the new Federal Reserve will step in and take over the governmental services contract, and the IMF version of United States will go back into bankruptcy reorganization. It's a con game. In other words, in which these two giant banking cartels, both now operated by the United Nations Corporation, abuse bankruptcy protection in a methodical, cyclic way. There are a lot of other games being played with semantic deceit based on similar names, but before we leave the topic of the name United States of America, everyone should be aware that there are two nations calling themselves United States of America. There is the United States of America, composed of now 50 states of the Union, and otherwise known as the United States of America Major, and there is the United States of America Minor, composed of the 7 insular states, more commonly referred to as territories and possessions: Guam, Puerto Rico, the state of New Columbia, that is D.C., Americans, Samoa, and Italia. The United States of America Major is populated by American state citizens. That should be corrected now to state nationals. The United States of America Minor is populated by U.S. citizens. American state citizens, it says, or substitute state nationals, have natural and unalienable rights. U.S. citizens have only the civil rights that the U.S. Congress feels like granting them. Are you beginning to see the depth, breadth, and width of this gigantic fraud that has been practiced against Americans? The reason why you've been enslaved? How many times have you checked the box, ignorantly saying, yes, you are a U.S. citizen? Sure, share as far as wide as possible. The more people who know the truth and have the detail, the better. Then the rats can't lead us around by the nose and baffle us with BS. That said, we're dealing with a nest of criminals. It started with the banks and promptly infested both the lawyers and the politicians. I think the ones most vulnerable to confrontation are the politicians. The politicians can then be used to whip and beat both the lawyers and the bankers, who have hitherto surreptitiously hidden behind their pals in the various legislatures. All the members of the state legislatures need to be forced to take their public oath of office and to swear that they will operate only within that office for the term of their service. What they're doing now is operating as officers of privately owned and operated corporations, merely calling themselves the, quote, state of whatever, a franchise of the old Federal Reserve Corporation doing business as the United States of America Incorporated, or state of whatever, styled as all caps, a franchise of the International Monetary Fund doing business as the United States, while pretending to be serving the public interest and serving a public office. They aren't. So start there. Go after the state legislatures and demand to know what kind of state they are running and whether they're occupying public office exclusively, or if they're impersonating public officials while acting in fact as officers of a franchise of a foreign for-profit governmental services corporation. Let them have it full bore. Get people educated and go for it. These sneaks have been lining their pockets with public resources for decades. Oh, I don't care. There's nothing compared to what I've done to the rats over the years. Haven't paid a penny of income tax in 20 years. have closed down foreclosures in 13 states, issued protection orders to the Joint Chiefs. I don't think explaining the misuses of the words United States of America is anything new, or worse, they didn't see all this immediately. Please see the last item in the answers section of the attached final judgments and civil orders document. The Roman Catholic Church is implicated in this mess up to its eyeballs, and nobody, including the Pope, is attempting to deny it. It was the 1845 Treaty of Verona between the then Pope and the British monarch, agreeing to undermine the American government that they were supposed to be trustees for, that began this whole mess. It's important for everyone to understand that however inspired the origins of the church may be, the actual institution is full of human faults and frailties and under constant and purposeful assault from the Crown Temple. The Crown Temple worships Satan, and one of its avowed goals is to infiltrate the church and commandeer it, much as the United States of America Minor has attempted to steal the identity and commandeer the resources of the United States of America Major. As we explain in the final judgment and civil orders, there are times when undercover agents of the Crown Temple gain prominence in the church, which results in all sorts of evil and skullduggery being committed in the name of the church. Much as so much evil, illicit trading in arms, drugs, prostitutes, tobacco, etc., has been carried on by the CIA in the name of America. In approaching this current situation, it is neither helpful nor appropriate to speak in generalities of the church is bad or America is good kind, because we are now very thankful to the last two popes, Benedict and Francis, who have risked their lives and who continue to risk their lives to try to correct the errors and deceits of predecessors. In the same way, it's easily seen that much of what has been done in the name of America in recent years has been thinly veiled, naked greed, self-interest, and carnality unleashed on the rest of the world. It would be easy to blame the church for not recognizing the fraud being promulgated in its name, but then it is a rather recent development that we have become aware of the fraud being practiced against us and in our name. So instead of blaming, I suggest we apply the goodwill test. When you see people of whatever race, creed, political party, or other group trying their best to achieve justice and peace, just skip the labels and pay attention to what they do and what they try to do instead of being deceived by propaganda devices designed to divide and conquer us. Signed, Anna. And then the next part. I know the question to ask the U.S. Marshals. Styles is all caps. Ask them in what office they are acting. Are they acting as U.S. Marshals, that is, mercenaries of the IMF doing business as the United States, a French commercial corporation? Or as U.S. Marshals, that is, mercenaries of the Federal Reserve, Styles is all caps, doing business as the United States of America? Or as U.S. Marshals, constitutional officers employed to protect the U.S. mail? You might inform them that if they're operating on our soil in either of the two corporate capacities, they're acting illegally, and that they don't have permission to have egress on state soil when they're acting as officers serving a private corporation, only when they're pursuing their lawful duties as constitutionally sworn officers protecting the U.S. mail. So was Randy on U.S., that is, federal soil when they apprehended him? Do the charges against him have anything to do with mail fraud, etc.? If not, then the U.S. Marshals are subject to citizen's arrest, and all you American state citizens should be looking up the exact words to use for a citizen's arrest in your state, and then next time one of these marshals leaves the courthouse or wherever they're penned up, arrest one of them. Seems simple enough to me. They are acting as outlaws on state soil, impersonating constitutional officers when they're acting in private capacity. Impersonating an officer is more than good grounds for a citizen's arrest. Inform the local district court that the only federal officers who have free egress on state land are the U.S. Marshals, styled as all lowercase, when in pursuit of their duty to protect the mail. When they're doing anything else, in particular when they are acting as officers of corporate entities, either the Federal Reserve, doing business as the United States of America, or the IMF, doing business as the United States, either one, they have no law enforcement office on state soil. And when they arrest someone, as they've arrested Randy, they're guilty of kidnapping and false arrest. Start holding their feet to the fire. Explain that they don't have the powers they think they have when they are acting as employees of either the United States of America, Inc. or the United States, Inc. They have all the authority of Ronald McDonald on state soil. That is, they have no business using their uniforms and badges and nightsticks on American state soil when they're involved in any activity except guarding the mail, period. Give the rats a subpoena through the U.S. District Court and show a cause order. That should get them scurrying. Actually, since Obama is an officer of a private corporation and does not answer to the U.S. Congress, styled as all caps, in that capacity, what really needs to be done to get rid of him is to bring suit against his actual employer, the IMF. That would get their attention. Running around begging the members of Congress to act gets you nowhere, because even if they want to impeach him, they gave away 90% of their power during the Roosevelt administration. Wait a minute, Arnie. We do have a lawful government. Our forefathers vested the entire civil government in each and every one of us. Each one of us has more civil authority on the land than the entire federal, quote, government. They did this so that no foreign entity could claim that they have established exclusive legislative jurisdiction over Americans, which is required before any foreign power can claim victory in a war and seize American land. Do not ever say or think that there is no legitimate government. We are our own legitimate government. That is why we are, each and every one of us, sovereign beings. There is no way that any foreign power can claim victory over us as long as a single American breathes. That is what you and everyone else here has to understand. That is what makes America different and exceptional. That is the only reason that we are not and cannot be overtaken and defeated in a fake war they have launched and pursued for the past 100 years. So long as one of us draws breath and remembers this, there is no way for them to ever declare victory. Stop pushing the red button, please. We are not there yet. And just because some of these things, such as the 2011 UCC filings, are just now coming into the purview of this particular group, does not mean that nothing has happened in 3 years since then. In fact, a lot has happened, and most of it doesn't have to do with treason. Most of it has to do with reason, which is needed now. While you guys are running around going, oh my gosh, we've been defrauded. You've been defrauded for over 150 years, okay? You were defrauded before you were born. Just because you suddenly realize you're being defrauded changes nothing except your awareness of the situation and hopefully your ability to change the situation. Others of us have been aware since 1995. We haven't been standing still. We have gone to Rome and sued the Vatican for breach of trust. We have brought lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. We have claimed back vacated office. We have laid huge commercial liens against perpetrators. We have fought most of this fight already. We have slogged through the entire commercial due process regimen in all our behalfs. We have corresponded with bank officials, foreign governments, state governments, law enforcement agencies, and on and on. Just because you are all now just waking up doesn't mean that all other Americans have been asleep. And you would be very, very mistaken if you think that your brothers and sisters have betrayed your interests and only looked after their own rumps. Many of us have sacrificed our lives, our fortunes, and our reputations on earth, served long prison terms, lost our homes, lost our families, you name it. Other Americans have already suffered to bring it forward, to bring forward the information and progress that you're just becoming aware of now. Let's start with the 2011 UCC filings you guys just discovered. Those are 3 years old. The creditors named have already booted up another fiat monetary system and issued more notes, United States Treasury notes, quote. That is, they have offered the world the same old crap, and guess what? The rest of the world has already said no. That's what the BRICS alliance is about. That's why other Americans have already taken action to claim back the assets of the United States of America, the actual factual one, already taken action to prevent Obama's mercenary commercial armies acting under the guise of being federal agencies from unleashing violence on our shores, already taken action to build a new viable monetary system based on commodities. You are years behind the curve, and you don't have all the information you need rightly to rightly know how to interpret what you are seeing. So please just stop and spend a few days to learn. You've been defrauded all your lives. Another week won't change anything, but it will change your ability to fight this battle, and it will increase the chances of peaceful resolution. I don't know what to do about Google. They are bullied by the federal corporation and probably don't know what they're dealing with any more than most people have known. Say things like that, it plays into their hands. That is precisely what they want us to think, because they can claim that they have established exclusive legislative jurisdiction over us and that they are the victors in their endless war. Instead, we must remember the birthright we are heir to and use that to squelch the vermin. As I said in my big letters message, the entire civil government of this country is vested in each and every one of us. That's how we can claim to be sovereigns without subjects in the first place. It is what makes America unique throughout the world. We are under no obligation to ever convene a Congress if we don't want to. But we should realize by now that our failure to watch over our own affairs and run our own government has resulted in this mess. A lot of people go bonkers when they are first confronted with the depth, breadth, and width of the fraud. They seize hold of one corner of it and start ripping and tearing in an ignorant fashion, and that does not serve the cause. You see it all over. There are thousands of people now with one piece of the jigsaw puzzle or a few pieces, and they think that that's all there is to it, but no. This is a truly vast mess that has developed over 150 years. What needs to happen is for people to approach this coldly, humbly, and methodically, everyone bringing their piece or pieces of the puzzle forward and working on it together. Well, put yourself in their moccasins. Most of them were and are just as ignorant as anyone else when they got into office. Only about 5 to 10% of them ever realized the truth, and they manipulate the others. So here we come and we tell them, hey, you're impersonating public officials. You are crooks. So far as they know, they ran for public office and they won fair and square, and they don't know what you're talking about. More than that, they don't want to know what you're talking about, because that puts them in line for a gray striped suit or a gibbet. It scares them silly. That's why forgiveness is key in this. We tell them, we forgive them, we acknowledge that this is a rotten situation all around, and we offer to work with them to restore a lawful government. We bring forward with what their limitations and responsibilities really are. We insist that our rights and contracts be respected. We press for our material interests and those of our states and brethren. We insist that they take a proper oath of public office, and we plod forward and we don't give up. That has been my modus operandi for 3 decades. Just get up every day and teach one more person, contact one more policeman, write one more letter, give one more radio interview, file one more lawsuit, issue one more subpoena. The big secret about the Bar Association is simple. In 1845, the then Pope and British monarch, both of whom were honor-bound to act as trustees for the United States Trust, and both of whom acted in gross breach of trust, agreed that the American experiment was not working. The whole idea of self-rule was antithetical to the idea of divine right of kings and papal supremacy. So they signed the secret Treaty of Verona and agreed to undermine the American government. The British monarch issued letters of marque and reprisal to the British Crown Commercial Company, which controls the bankers and lawyers, and issues licenses to the lawyers to act as privateers. That is why the Bar Association requires licenses. Anytime you see the word license, it means that someone in a position of rulership is giving someone else the license or permission to do something that is otherwise illegal. In this case, the king gave the members of the Bar Association permission to act as privateers against American commercial vessels. They couch all this in seagoing terms because the jurisdiction where they attack us is international admiralty and maritime commercial law. There are 3 jurisdictions defined by the global estate trust established by the Roman Catholic Church circa 1450 AD: air, land, and sea. Each jurisdiction has its own law forms and natural venue and law forms. The air jurisdiction is global in nature and functions under canon law. The sea jurisdiction is international in nature and functions under admiralty law. The land jurisdiction is national in nature and functions under the law of the land. We are naturally owed the law of the land, but these vermin have connived to redefine us as American vessels and so enable themselves to attack our estates in the unnatural jurisdiction of international admiralty. Our problem is that the lawyers and bankers contrive to usurp onto the land and to set aside the law of the land by presuming that we were missing, presumed dead, and that our estates were commercial vessels subject to maritime salvage liens. Using all this fanciful reasoning, they developed a highly efficient fraud machine which they have wielded in international jurisdictions to rob, defraud, falsely arrest, conscript, and otherwise abuse the innocent Americans who respected these rotters as men of law, when in fact they've been operating as robbers and racketeers and extortion artists. All these defendants you see in court cases, none of them are the living men and women of the same or similar name. They are all, without exception, corporate administrative franchises of either the United States or the United States of America corporations that are merely named after living Americans. Listen up and learn fast. The living man or woman is either described in law or denoted using all small letters for their name, all lowercase letters, like this: John Quincy Adams, styled as all lowercase, or John Quincy, John Quincy, Adams, meaning John Quincy of the House of Adams, or styled as upper and lowercase John Quincy of the House of Adams. The foreign situs trusts set up by the agents of the old Federal Reserve System were all named using upper and lowercase names like this: John Quincy Adams. The Roman inferior estate trusts set up by the United States were all named using all capital letters styled as John Quincy Adams, all uppercase. And the public utilities that are setting up now in the next step of their fraud schemes are all names like John Q. Adams, styled as all uppercase with just the middle initial. The instant you see anything addressed to John Q. Adams, you want to write back and protest the new name, which is not your name in any case, but which you must protect in order to keep them from rolling over your estate into this new commercial vessel and claiming that you have willingly contracted with them. Once again, it is all fraud based on similar names and semantic deceit and abuse and breach of trust. Start taking it to the attorneys. Write to your local judicial council, beard the president of the local bar association, nab individual attorneys, write them letters, inform them that as of September 1st, 2013, they are all 100% commercially and individually liable for their acts of criminality, omission, and fraud. That is one of the effects of Pope Francis's first apostolic letter, which rewrote the International Criminal Code. In other words, tell the lawyers that their licenses are no good anymore and won't protect them when they act as pirates and privateers against the unsuspecting and innocent people who've been their prey for 100 years. The game is up, and now the hunters become the hunted. That 2011 UCC filing, well, I have pursued it all the way down the pike and have reclaimed control of my own estate and filed commercial liens against the United Nations and the IMF in the United States in behalf of the states of America and me, the living woman. Then I have made an irrevocable will granting an equal interest in the claim to all Americans, so both the states and the people inhabiting the states now have a viable and timely commercial affidavit standing for their interests. The so-called Republic for the United States of America is just another private club claiming to represent us and resisting the foundational premise and requirement of the actual republic that we each independently present ourselves. Speaking for myself now and forever, I've had enough of being represented by all those who have been elected to public offices they haven't entered or honored, and I deny any ability of the volunteer members of the Republic for the United States of America to represent me either. All these representative bodies seek to mislead people into thinking that these groups are the legitimate government, which implies that the rest of us are not the legitimate government. In fact, we are each and every one of us the only government and always have been. Delegating our authority via elections was only a method used to expedite administration of government services, nothing more or less. This game of representing people has become a means of theft, corruption, and deceit. We must recognize that representative government is at fault for those present circumstances and that those elected to, quote, represent us have misrepresented us and lined their pockets and spilled our blood. We must further recognize that human nature being what it is, this is the predictable outcome of indulging in fantasies. To the extent that we delegate power to any other agent or agency from now on, it must be conscious, official, individual act, not subject to the vagaries of elections, Diebold machines, or, quote, trust. We must each officially and individually choose individuals if we want them to carry our proxy, and we must saddle them with exact instructions and fiduciary accountability if we wish to continue to the device of representative government at all. Mark Gardner, please forward my objection to the Republic for the United States of America leadership. They have no standing except the same individual standing that we all possess. Their pretensions otherwise are unseemly and offensive, and so are the underlying assumptions that they proceed upon. They believe apparently that when we all get together and decide what should happen to or for the rest of us, that we are under obligation to honor their will instead of our own. They conceive of the whole being rather than the individuals making up the whole, which is a patent error of logic amounting to mental illness. Equal means equal. Collective representation is akin to collective guilt, an impossibility. There is no such thing as collective guilt. There is only the guilt of individuals collected together. In the same way, there is no such thing as representative government and never has been. There have only been groups of individual people pretending to represent others who have not presented themselves. This representation by omission is intrinsically fraudulent and open to abuse. We must face the facts and our own responsibility without recourse to yet another private club claiming to represent everyone. It doesn't work, it never has, and making that mistake is how our country got into this mess in the first place. Signed Anna. Index to all articles by Anna von Reitz is, this is an old web address, but it's at ANNAVONREITZ.com. Give generously via PayPal.